I'm here today with a very good business colleague of mine, George Blakely, who has recently completed an amazing adventure as part of being involved in a very diverse team with a whole range of skills and backgrounds to make this whole experience come alive. I'm not going to tell you what the experience was. I think that's stealing George's thunder. But I think both myself and the people watching this, George, would be really keen to understand what the motivation was to get involved in this whole adventure in the first place.
I remember some years ago thinking I needed an adventure, and for a couple of reasons. One was, I think, quite personal, that I've always been someone who likes adventure, likes challenging myself, likes doing things that are something special. And I was looking around for something that might appeal, but there was a big professional reason for it, and that was the main driver. It was really stepping back into a high performance team that operated in difficult circumstances and had to cope with a challenging environment. So we had a conversation with my wife Heidi, and we were looking at various activities, and it was actually her. So I'm going to blame my wife, because she was down in London, and in the tube you'll often see the posters on the side of the wall, and it was advertising the Round the World Clipper adventure, the sailing race. And she came back and said, you like sailing. What about a leg of the Round the World yacht race? And little did she know, within a week I had an appointment booked, and within 2 weeks I'd been down for the interview, and that's when we sort of started talking very seriously about that was the adventure that we'd pick.
Wow, incredible. So it's your wife to blame then?
It is. She's entirely to blame. She was actually extremely supportive, because I was away for the best part of, over a period of 2 years doing the training. I was away for the best part of 6 weeks at various stages, and then the actual race I raced from London down to Uruguay, so it was best part of 2.5 months I was away. So she was incredibly supportive, and so were the kids. But she is to blame. Yes, you're right.
So George, you mentioned that one of the key drivers was about being involved in something that had that dynamic around a high-performing team, obviously because of what you're about to engage in for such a long time. There was that real need to come together as a team and understand the different dynamics of the team. So talk us through some of the real highs and also some of the lows that you experienced during the race itself.
Actually, the highs weren't just in the race itself. The highs were often in the way that we came together as a team before the race and the way we trained together. And there was a big part of that process that almost mirrored the classic sort of Tuckman experience of forming the team and going through that process. So we did come together, and we did a number of things to help us in that process. The highs of the actual journey, I'm competitive, so we were focused on trying to win. We weren't identified as a team that was likely to win, because we didn't have a huge amount of experience. Our skipper, our professional skipper, because we are an amateur team, all amateur sailors. Many of us had very little sailing experience before starting this adventure, but the skipper is a professional, but wasn't experienced in terms of ocean racing, so we weren't given much chance of winning. And for us to really get a podium position would have been a big result. So racing was really invigorating, was really exciting. The challenge, of course, is that you see everyone at the start line, but after about 2 hours, the boats are actually more than 5-6 miles apart, and therefore you don't see each other for about 6 weeks until you start coming back towards the finish line. And in fact, we were so spread out at the finish line, we didn't even see the other yachts at the finish line. So you're racing against the radar and the positioning So that was a real high for me, the sort of the racing element, and we finished third, which was a fantastic achievement.
Fantastic.
The boat now is just finished the Australian leg, and they finished first in that leg, and we are second overall. So we are doing something right in terms of the way we're performing.
Yeah.
The other highs were the sense of camaraderie, being with a group of people that were just great fun. So much enjoyment and friendships that were developed over that period of time, and just being on the ocean, being out there with not being able to see a single thing apart from the ocean, the odd whale, dolphins, but it was just this majesty of this enormous planet that we live on, and how special it is. That was a real highlight as well.
And what were some of the things around working with the team in such a closed environment for such a long time? What did that teach you? What did you take from that?
Yeah, it's because I afterwards I sat down. I thought, right, what have I really learned from it? And there was a number of things that I think were confirmed to me, that we're all different, and the diversity is so important. So the fact that we were so different, the fact that we were able to draw on different experiences, different backgrounds, different skill sets, was fantastic. That was really important. But we have to appreciate those differences, and it did take a little bit of also tolerance. And that's the word that I also majored on when I reflected on what have I learned. And I didn't perhaps consider that so much when I'm looking at team performance in teams with our clients. And that element of appreciating other people's point of view, recognising it's different, but then also learning to tolerate it and not looking to change their mind or sort of put it on the table to discuss it because we have a difference. There are times I think where we just have to accept that they see it that way, I see it this way, and it's okay, that's fine. It doesn't have to be solved. And that element of, you know what, on a boat, there's an element of physical space that you feel constrained, and you're constantly bumping into each other, and you're wet, you're cold, someone's trying to get their kit, you know, the sailing gear off, and they're elbowing you in the face, and there's a lack of space, and the boat's moving around, it's at an angle, so everything's uncomfortable, and you just have to learn to accept that kind of stuff. But there's also, you know, that's almost a metaphor for the behavioural stuff.
Yes.
For the fact that we also have to accept that someone's just wound me up by what they've said or how they're behaving or what they're not saying, or perhaps I don't think they're pulling their weight. But you know what? You just accept that they're tremendously tired. They're probably feeling a bit low. They're missing their family, and what actually they need is a bit of a handhold, not a come on, you're not pulling your weight.
Yes.
And it's recognising those moments and working with it. That was a huge part of it, and I don't think that's any different to sitting in a boardroom or sitting in a contact centre and appreciating that someone's come into the office with some issues that they've perhaps had at home, and asking them to ignore those issues is ridiculous, because it's part of us, it's part of our life. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I think this point you make about tolerance is really interesting. So again, going back to the situation that you were in, there couldn't have been much time for sleep, maybe short bursts of sleep, and we all know that sleep deprivation can make us a little less tolerant of, you know, the tiny things that wind us up suddenly from being so big are massive now on a boat. But you mentioned about the coming together before the race and the work you did there, and you mentioned to me earlier that you talked to them about disc. Did that help going into the race, George? So the team having a bit of an understanding about how they behave and how they're likely to behave then as a team?
It did. There was a real powerful coming together on the team event, and this certainly facilitated that. We did the exercise where we got people sort of standing around a room and looking at things through a different lens and just appreciating the diversity, because we had a fairly even spread.
Yes.
Interestingly, our skipper came out as an S, and he's very humble, shows vulnerability. and was very much interested constantly on how the rest of us were feeling and how we felt about it. And initially I thought, gosh, we're about to cross an ocean and put our lives in this person's hands. And does he have that strength of character? But my gosh, it reminded me that whatever style you are, it's nothing to do with strength of character. And he demonstrated this wonderful ability to connect with us all, which was his real strength. But he also demonstrated this ability to step into other styles when he needed to. And there are plenty of times when he had to get shouty on the boat and had to be a very different character, but was still authentic to himself. And I think us understanding where he was coming from helped our relationship with him in particular. But also there was a language on the boat that also helped us. Did we always refer to it? No, but it just became a little bit ingrained in the way that we looked at things and appreciated that we were all different.
Yeah. And you're right, it is in a team environment, be on a boat or in a boardroom, it's having the raising of the self-awareness to understand that I am different to the person sat next to me, I am different to the person working next to me on the boat. And sometimes our levels of tolerance can be raised or lowered, I think, depending on maybe mood and how you are that day and some of the tasks that maybe you're having to do that day.
Completely agree. There's, you mentioned sleep earlier, that the longest period of sleep I had over 6 weeks was 2.5 hours in one sort of undisturbed burst, because you're doing 4 hours on, 4 hours off. So by the time you've got your wet kit off, eaten something, gone into your bunk, you feel like you get woken up and you feel like, hang on a sec, I've just been,
just this minute got down to sleep.
That's what it feels like, and you're back up on deck at 2 a.m. and off you go again. And we all come to work having had a lack of sleep, and it's recognising that, I am likely to be a bit moody or a bit short, and of course you can control and reframe that behaviour. It just takes a little bit harder. The work takes a little bit harder. And there is undoubtedly that diversity on the boat definitely brought strength, but we have people from every different nationality and culture on our boat. We have people from Saudi Arabia, people from Europe, people from Australia, and it was deeper than just that sort of the way we like to operate. There were some real deep ingrained values that were quite different, but what we were able to do is find a set of values that we all agreed on, and we did quite a lot of work on the team build weekend about looking at our values and our mission and what actually we wanted to achieve. And interestingly, the one that came out top by a long way was stay safe. And you got
that.
And it was, here I am, this competitive person, and I want to have fun and camaraderie, but consistently we all agreed, we want to all come home safe. And that was everything we do, we look after each other, both physically, because there's clearly a big risk on the boat, but also metaphorically in terms or thinking about each other's, how they're feeling, and that was a big part of the way we approached performance.
And I think that's a lovely phrase, again, George, to bring into the business side of what you and I do, is that looking out for each other. And I know there's a lot of teams we work with, and sadly that's not there. They're very fragmented, they're very siloed as individuals, and trying to nurture that through some of the tools that we have available with DISC and the 5 behaviours really helps them to recognise that this is not just about me, this is about something much bigger than me. And I would imagine there was a great sense of that on the boat. It's not just about these individuals, it's something much bigger than that, the team performance.
Yeah, it is. There's an element, particularly with the long ocean crossings, that it is an endurance test. So 38 days at sea with losing weight dramatically, tiredness, it is a human endurance as well as a physical effect of actually changing sails and moving the boat as fast as we can. So that endurance factor does rely on huge amounts of that. This is about behaviour, not just the skills of sailing this as fast as we can. And I know that the work that you do, so much of what you do is that initial phase of, look, we need to get to this place before you're even starting to talk about process and starting to talk about how we can do X better. Because at the moment you haven't created the right culture within your team to even have those conversations.
Yeah, spot on.
And that's what we've got to work with so many organisations, is convincing them before we start all of that,
Yes.
we need to do this.
Yes.
And then, well, but I want to move on to fix this problem. You're not going to fix it permanently unless we do this other stuff.
Yes.
And once they've done it, they get it. And actually, fixing the problem becomes quite easy
Yes.
because they've done this sort of base work of, you know what, you mentioned the word trust. It's this kind of relationship that we have.
Yeah. So George, just to sum up then from this whole experience, what has it taught you overall about you, and what has it made you think about in terms of team performance, maybe in a slightly different way than before you did the race?
What did it tell me about me? Good question. I think I always knew that we're capable of extraordinary things. And I think individuals are capable of extraordinary things. I think when you come together as a team, you can go way beyond that. You can go way beyond what you thought was possible. And it reminded me that that's the case when you have the power of the team. And I know that might sound a little bit glib, but it generally is true.
Yeah.
It generally is true. Not just achieving physical activity, but that emotional support that you need. I think it taught me that I'm capable of more tolerance than I perhaps gave myself credit for. I'm quite a strong D.
Yes.
I'd like to think that I've got the emotional intelligence, having worked in the business, to adjust and to flex my style, but I am who I am to a certain extent. And it reminded me that I do have that tolerance, but I need to work at it. And it was inspiring. It was inspiring to see how others coped, and I felt proud to do what I did. What I learnt about teams, it really was the basis of everything is putting the team ahead of your own reasons to be on that boat, and therefore agreeing what we all wanted to achieve individually and collectively became more important. And that bit about staying safe was so important, but we also had other objectives underneath that, which was going fast as we could, trying to get on a podium, trying our very best,
Yeah,
but also
of course.
not beating ourselves up if we weren't, because sometimes it's down to you're breaking something on the boat or being knocked over. The scariest moment was at about 2 a.m. at about 600 miles off Uruguay. We hit something very solid. I was in my bunk, instantly woken up. People that were on deck were knocked over. People in the galley were knocked over. And we all out of our bunks instantly, looking at each other, think, what's happened? And we think we'd either hit a container or a whale or something solid, because we'd instantly come to a halt with a massive crack. And the first thing you do is, after the initial sort of shock of looking at each other, we lift all the boards on the boat and go into the bilges and check the keel bolts, that the keel hasn't been damaged, and that we're not having any ingress of water. And it was those moments that, as soon as we had the kind of looking at each other for about 2 seconds, then we just went into emergency mode, and everyone was doing their job and checking everyone was all right. And it's moments like that fortunately, everything was fine. Yeah. But it's moments like that you realise this team is trained and knows what they're doing, and just does stuff. Partly, you could argue, for one's own safety, but partly just because that's what we do collectively as a team.
Yes.
Because we know we all have a role to play.
Yeah.
And that was actually, on reflection, whilst it was really quite scary at the time, it was the only moment I felt genuinely, oh my gosh, because if we're taking on lots of water, there's a problem, but it was the only moment I felt, gosh. But after that shock, and we checked, I think it was fine. Obviously, I had to continue then to check every 20 minutes. We had to lift the boards, check the no water ingress. It taught us that we can cope in adversity, and you know what, we knew that if we had to hit the life rafts, we knew what we had to do and we'd do it. So we felt confident in each other.
Yeah. And you got back safe and in one piece?
Yep, I'm a stone and a half lighter, so still one piece, but lost a lot of weight. And it was wonderful to fly back into Birmingham, and all the family were there at Birmingham Airport, and so I was in one piece and completed safely. And actually, everyone in our crew, touch wood, whatever it is, we'll use a plant, has still been safe, and we haven't had any severe injuries or significant issues, and long may that continue for the rest of the voyage.
Well, George, massive congratulations. I'm absolutely in awe of what you did. And thank you for taking some time to share your experience with us today. Thank you.
No.